Greetings, friends and family. Welcome back to Mind Keys. My name is Dave, and in today's video, we're going to be exploring kind of a quick, off-the-cuff riff and rant. It might be a little loose because I haven't really prepared my thoughts too much on it, on why psychedelics heal depression. You know, what it is that they're doing to heal depression. And there's probably more than one answer to that particular question, and there's probably I might even do more videos about it because I do have a lot to say on the topic, but I had a few minutes here before I get on call with a client, and I wanted to just kind of lay out for you a quick understanding to give you some insight into what it is that psychedelics do to heal depression, and also kind of on top of that, by extension, you'll understand how you can heal your life, heal your mind, heal your emotions without the psychedelics, without drugs, without having to rely on some sort of an external stimulus that you're taking in your body to heal yourself. The answer is broader than any one particular substance, and I think that that's worth noting. So let's go ahead and get into it here. So the reason I'm making this video is that I've heard a lot of podcasts and seen a lot of videos on the kind of current psychedelic science and what's coming out, what we're learning. And let me be clear, I'm thrilled, I'm excited, I'm like wrapped with attention on this particular topic, and I'm so happy this study is being done, and this area of science is kind of blossoming again. It's so important, and I think we're going to learn a lot through it. And I'm so grateful to all the scientists, to all the to all the people doing it, to all the people funding it, guys like Tim Ferriss that are kind of proactively throwing the hat in the ring and kind of making it happen. So happy to see all of this work being done. But what I find lacking, and this is kind of the conversation I'm wanting to have with you, is kind of the rubber meets the road, boots on the ground, subjective, personal experience of how psychedelics change and really reduce depression. And also I want to, this is part of this larger conversation I have with my audience here, with you guys, about how do we apply psychedelics to our own personal growth path? What are the techniques that the everyday person can do? Because here's the thing, there are millions of psychedelics out there in the world, millions, and have been for decades. And there's not a whole lot of content out there in terms of how to use them as a tool for personal growth. There's a lot of I'm kind of stumbling my words here. There's a lot of anecdotes out there in terms of people who have had life-changing experiences through psychedelics. So clearly it's a thing. It's a thing that happens out there in life. It's a thing that happens out there in the world. Obviously, there are also anecdotes of people having traumatic, negatively impactful life-changing experiences as well. So in terms of harm reduction and also just efficacy in terms of how do you use these chemicals to heal yourself and heal your life and transform yourself, if you're going to do that on your own. Because let's face it, we need self-directed mental health tools. There's a huge need for mental health support out there in the world right now. There's an increasing amount of mental health issues with not enough therapists, coaches, and teachers out there who are affordable enough to reach everybody. So hence, one of the things I want to do here is start to build this conversation with you on how do we work this path of whether it's psychedelics or just spiritual practices or just working on mental health and bolstering your own internal reality so that you feel the way you want to feel, so that you own your own internal experience and you are kind of the master of your own life and your own internal experience. How do we get there? How do we do that? And for those of you that are interested in psychedelics, since this is an area of familiarity and expertise and certainly plenty of hours logged in the past for myself, what can I convey to you knowing what I know about NLP and hypnosis and personal shift, personal transformation that might help you be able to reconcile those kinds of experiences into your own lasting personal change, your own lasting personal healing path and personal growth path. That's kind of what I'm interested in here. So pardon the digression, but that's why I'm making this video. And so I see all this content out there about what psychedelics are doing in terms of statistics, in terms of regions of the brain, in terms of the chemistry, in terms of what kind of ailments and maladies that people deal with they seem to be effective in so far. All of that is optimistic, great news, and beautiful. But what isn't mentioned a lot is how they work, what they do, at least from a personal point of view, from a subjective point of view. Again, I'm not a scientist. I don't, have an MRI machine here in my apartment. I don't have a way to really address what that might be. And so from a mechanics point of view, I'm not the guy to answer that question. But from a subjective point of view, I can offer you some insight. So let's go ahead and get into it and look at why psychedelics might actually transform depression. So there's a fundamental principle here at play that I think is one of the ground floor, functional, subjective reasons that psychedelics shift depression. And I've seen it with myself. I've dealt with depression for years, decades really. For most of my life, I've struggled with it. And psychedelics have been a relief to it, although not a permanent solution to it. And I can explain what the difference there is. And also, I've seen it with a lot of my friends who have also struggled with depression. I know a lot of people who have taken psychedelics, and amongst all those people, a lot of them have lightened their load significantly by taking psychedelics, whether that's microdosing or doing full dose psychedelic treatments or experiences, whether those were recreational. And I know this is kind of taboo to say because there's this kind of distinction right now between recreation and therapeutic use. And I do think that distinction needs to be there, and there is a difference. But let's be honest, there are plenty of people who, take mushrooms at a festival or concert or Burning Man or something like that, and have a revelatory experience and have a transformative moment, have a healing experience in the midst of a recreational moment. So obviously that's certainly possible too. The answer is that psychedelics reframe your experience of reality, and they cause a reframe at the level of experience itself. So what do I mean by reframe? You've probably heard this word, whether in terms of psychology or even in terms of media and publicity and public dialogue. It's a very popular term right now socially. It's a very current term. I learned the term through my studies in NLP, my studies of neuro-linguistic programming. And what a reframe is a shifting of your relationship to the frame of context or the frame of reference. So whatever we're doing in terms of life, when we're relating to something, that is a frame of reference. So, if I'm playing a game, the frame of reference of whatever I'm doing inside of that game is that it's a game. If I'm in a make it or break it serious moment, then the frame of reference is that I'm inside a very serious moment, and this is make or break and high impact. If I am, if I am flirting with a person, then that's a particular frame of reference. There's a particular thing going on here called we're flirting and we might hook up. If I am learning, that's also a particular frame of reference. I'm doing something called learning, and so all the efforts I'm making inside of that, the reading, the thinking, the reflecting, the note-taking, the whatever, they're all towards this kind of end goal or towards this broader thing called learning, right? And so the basic understanding in hypnosis and NLP is that the frame of reference that you're inside of determines your behavior and determines your experience. So, if I'm having an edgy conversation with somebody where we're kind of dissing each other, if the frame of reference around that conversation is that we are really good friends and we have this long history of friendship and rapport and trust, and we're just busting each other's nuts, that's one frame of reference. And that could actually be very funny. We could be laughing and grinning, and the dissing and the back and forth could be a form of entertainment and amusement and actually a form of bonding, right, between people. Not no judgment about whether or not that's good or bad, just saying that set of behaviors makes sense inside of that context. If you take out the friendship and it's two strangers that have never met and they're dissing each other, that could be confrontation. That could be a fight. That could be, preamble to an all-out brawl. So the frame of context totally determines what the content inside of it is. And then one of the things they say in NLP, if you notice this mirror back here, if I were to pick up that mirror, or pick up the frame around the mirror rather, and move it to twist it, 90 degrees, or to whatever, pick it up and throw it across the room, what would happen in the mirror? The mirror would also move. The mirror would also twist. The mirror would also fly across the room with a frame, right? Same goes for our own experience and our own experience in terms of frame of reference. So I want you to imagine for a moment that a person who's never taken psychedelics is living inside a default reality. What we would call in the psychedelic science the default mode network. So your brain is operating inside a particular mode, and a particular day in, day out reality that is really all it knows. And inside of that reality exists all your emotions, all your thoughts, all your experiences, all your reference experiences, all your moods, all your thought loops, all your habits, everything exists inside this one particular default mode that you normally live inside of in your day in, day out. And if that's all you know, if that's all you've ever lived, if you've never radically pushed yourself outside the default mode, then that becomes really all you know about reality and all you know about yourself, right? And so inside of this default mode, if you experience depression, and let's say you're experiencing depression, chronically inside of this default mode, then that is inside the container of your default mode. So the frame is the default mode, and all your emotions again, and all the content. So if you never move the frame, you don't even know it's there. And so whatever's inside of it becomes what's real to you and becomes what you experience because you don't know any different. So your depression is kind of, the mirror, so to speak, or the picture in a painting or something like that. The depression is, because you've never played with the frame, it becomes what becomes highlighted. Now, when you eat a psychedelic, and I think this is true at microdosing, I think this is even more true, and I think this is true to a lesser, to a different degree with like nootropics, or, obviously even something like getting drunk or getting stoned on weed or anything like that. There is a shifting that happens of your default reality to some degree, right? But, and I think that's true even with microdosing, you get a little bit of that too. But when you take a standard dose, like a full dose of a psychedelic, or even more so obviously with a heroic dose where you're over the top in the deep end of the pool suddenly, what happens is that your experience of reality shifts. You've reframed it by giving your nervous system a whole new way of relating to reality. So that means new emotions, new perspectives, new points of view, new reflections on the same reality, on the same base reality that you had previously experienced. You're now seeing it and feeling it through a completely different set of filters. And sometimes that means new thoughts that you've never thought before. Sometimes that means new emotions that you've never felt before. That means, or emotions you haven't felt since maybe you're a kid. That's a very common thing. People feel very childlike and bubbly and playful, and they're like, I haven't felt this way since I was 8. Like, what's up with that? Or it could be maybe you're feeling objective about something you've always been subjective about, or maybe you are, seeing a blind spot, something that you'd never considered before, never really reflected on, that all of a sudden takes on a profound new meaning. So by reframing your experience of life, it totally moves all the contents of your thoughts and your emotions and disrupts them in a positive way. It causes you to kind of open up and flow and fluidly address all these different aspects of your internal experience and your subjective experience of your life, because you're inside a new frame of reference. So the frame has changed, so the contents change with the frame, right? And so if depression is part of the contents of your life experience, and then you reframe your base experience of reality to be different, better, more beautiful, more profound, broader, bigger, more energetic, more interesting, more profound, then all of a sudden your reasons for feeling depressed have to shift too. And I think that this is so important to understand, not only because it gives you an understanding of what's happening in a psychedelic experience, but also because this is something you don't need psychedelics to do. This is something you can do in your life any day, any moment. You can give yourself a new experience that reframes your experience of life. So if you take up a new hobby, if you try a new sport, if you go exercise or do some new exercise that you've never done before, or take a class in something you've never done before, or you travel to a new place. That's a big one. A lot of people will go traveling. It reframes their experience of reality, and then they see themselves and others and their own culture in a new light, right? That's a very obvious one. There's so many different ways you can reframe your experience of life by disrupting what you normally do. Causes your brain to become more neuroplastic, to wake up, to become alive again and become curious and listen and pay closer attention because it wants you to survive, right? But in that survival mode, in that alert mode, you're also learning, you're also adaptive, you're also curious, you're also discovering. So all of that sense of like childlike wonder starts to come forward again too. All of that is just inherent in giving yourself a new experience, which is essentially a reframe. A lot of times when you hear the term reframe, what you'll hear and what people think of it as is reframing your mindset, a cognitive reframe, where you're maybe changing your attitude, or you're changing your perception, or you're changing your goal, this kind of, it's a mental construct level. But I'm going to make the argument here that with psychedelics, what's happening is not a cognitive reframe, although those happen too. What you're getting is a nervous system level, somatic, bodily, sensation, experience level reframe. And that experience level reframe is so much deeper and more profound than simply changing a mindset or simply changing an attitude, as powerful as those are. Those are powerful. Let's not mistake it here. Those are profound too. But changing your experience, proving to yourself that there's more to life than what you knew previously, is so much more profoundly powerful. So I want to kind of put that out there for you and just kind of let you guys ruminate on this idea. One of the reasons that psychedelics, I think, in my opinion, one of the reasons that psychedelics are so profound for curing depression is that they reframe your experience of reality. Another reason, kind of tying into my last video, which was on kind of the mechanics of depression and what I think causes what most people call depression, is that basically, just summarizing that really quick, when you're depressed, or what most people call depression, what you're probably experiencing is a disconnect or an alienation or a loss of your connection to your sense of values in life and what's important to you, what it is that's meaningful to you. And I would offer that perhaps psychedelics also awaken new values, or awaken values that you've always felt but maybe had kind of fallen into the background of your consciousness and you hadn't thought much about and stopped caring about or stopped feeling connected to. Part of what psychedelics do is they kind of jostle your nervous system awake and shake out the noise and shake out the dust, so to speak, and all of a sudden you're sparkly and shiny and bright again. And in that, you remember things that you loved, that you cared about. In that, you discover new things that you love and you care about. And all of a sudden, through all that meaning, all that juicy meaning that comes alive in you, you discover new values, or you discover old values that you still care about. And in that, all of a sudden, you decide, well, wait, these things matter to me. These things are worth living for. These things are worth engaging in. These things are worth exploring more. I have passion about these things. And when you discover that about yourself, that's the antidote to depression. The antidote, the opposite of depression, is engagement, is connection, is aliveness, is moving towards your values, right? And so that's another reason that psychedelics start to heal depression. Not only do they give you this reframe experience where all of a sudden you're in a new territory with your nervous system and it's interesting and it feels good and you feel alive, but also while you're in that experience, you discover and you remember your values. And as you remember your values and as you discover these new things, you realize that being depressed is not really what you value. It's not really what you want. What you want are these other things that have meaning to you. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that kind of ties it together for you. If you like this kind of content, please like, comment, subscribe, engage with my channel. Let me know, because the feedback keeps me going to make more of this kind of stuff. If this resonates for you, if you want to work on your value system, I'm going to do a free video series. And then if this inspires you and you're like, yeah, I want to reclaim myself, I want to reclaim my internal experience, I want to tap into my values, I want to transform, I want to shift my identity from being one that is kind of switched off and depressed and low and suffering to one that's at my best, hit me up. I'd be happy to have a phone conversation with you to see if you're a good fit for the work I do and tell you more about it, and we can go from there. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you're doing well. I hope you have a beautiful day, and I hope this made sense to you. I hope this really clicks for you and helps you understand what's going on underneath the surface a little more with psychedelics. All right, be well, take care. Much love to you guys. I got to get on my phone call here, and I'll catch you guys soon.